Time you choose a head of department.
Yes?
You should pick one with pubic hair.
This is the future of law enforcement, a new breed of soldier designed to terminate with extreme prejudice, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren.
Do you really think for 1 second those wimps at the Pentagon would allow the regeneration of dead soldiers?
Now, the hunters
I'm giving the orders from now on.
have become the hunted as man and machine fight to the death. Universal Soldier, Tuesday at 10:40 on Carlton.
Stay with us here on LWT for the latest news at home and abroad from ITN with Dennis Tuohy after the break.
Seriously injuring 400 avocados. On a lighter note, ambrosia creamed rice. Can you draw its creamy satisfaction? Let's see if these three can. We'll be right back after this break.
Oh, lovely pot.
Welcome back, top TV artist Tony Hart. Your comments.
This one communicates the extreme creaminess we're looking for. And now, the gallery.
Controversial as ever, Tony. Okay, it's creamy, but is it portable? Anthea will demonstrate.
Remember, no chopstick spoons!
Ambrosia creamed rice. Devon knows how they make it so creamy.
New Dolmio stir-in sauce. You spend less time making it, so you can spend more time enjoying it. New Dolmio stir-in sauce.
There is a pure Anchor butter that spreads straight from the fridge. Rich and creamy, Anchor spreadable butter. Starting in the 10p Times tomorrow, get a free Eurostar return ticket to Paris or Brussels. Tomorrow in the Times, just 10p.
When Donald McIntyre turned up for work, one of his colleagues was dealing in pornography and stolen goods.
Excellent. Looks sweet.
And they were all selling and taking drugs.
I took about 10 and tidied them up, and I got all the lads, you know, just the old lads, 3 lines, making lines up, just going out to snort it.
And the thing was, they were there to stop it. For the first time on British television, the inside story of how drugs infiltrate our major cities. World in Action, Monday at 8.
This is LWT.
From the studios of ITN, the news with Dennis Tuohy.
Hello, welcome to the programme. The headlines tonight. In Zaire, the flood of refugees increases. The UN warns of worse to come. The desperate search for survivors as a Cairo apartment block collapses. And the schoolboy whose teacher's in trouble for letting him smack the bullies. The United Nations is warning that the unfolding refugee crisis in eastern Zaire could become even worse than the Rwandan tragedy in 1994, when 1 million people fled. Many Hutus have left their camps around Bukavu, which is falling to the Tutsis, and 200,000 are leaving Goma, some crossing back into Rwanda, most heading deeper into Zaire. ITN's Africa correspondent Steve Scott reports from the border.
Stepping forward to an uncertain future. Thousands of Rwanda refugees who for 2 years have lived in the relative safety of eastern Zaire. Safe until now. Their refugee camps have come under attack from Tutsi rebel forces. That is what has forced them back home. But it's a reluctant return. These are mainly Hutus who fled Rwanda after the '94 genocide, fearful of Tutsi revenge killings. In the last week, Eastern Zaire has descended into chaos, and transit camps are the new homes for refugees, where even the young must play their part. And incredibly, there is still hope. United Nations aid coaches are bringing hundreds at a time from their shelter in the mountains to this makeshift camp. Hutu men, wary of the mainly Tutsi army who are in control here. All 5,000 who cross the border today will eventually be brought here until the government decides what to do with them. More secure, at least, than the 200,000 still running from fighting in Zaire with nowhere to go. Steve Scott, ITN, on the Rwanda-Zairean border.
Rescue workers are tonight desperately digging for survivors after a block of flats collapsed in Cairo. More than 100 people who live there are missing. So far, 2 bodies have been found. 19 people have been pulled out alive. Gareth Furby reports.
The building was 12 stories high with 40 separate flats. In a few seconds, hundreds of tons of concrete, floors and furniture collapsed into rubble. Neighbours said they heard a sound like a bomb, and then there was just dust. As it settled, they heard people crying for help. From the emergency services, a frantic search for survivors. The building was also home to an X-ray clinic. Its patients may be among the victims. Rescue efforts are now concentrated in a corner of the block, where the bottom few floors may still be standing. The cause is unclear, but for the past week, builders have been working on the first floor, removing walls to make space for a bank. An earthquake 2 weeks ago may have also weakened the foundations. Tonight, they were still finding survivors, but for many others, there is little hope. Gareth Furby, ITN.
Here, the Education Secretary, Gillian Shepherd, has insisted that the teaching of family values must form part of the national curriculum. She said a report to be published this week which recommends teaching a so-called morality code doesn't give enough importance to marriage and the family. Here's our political correspondent, Hugh Pym.
Billed as a draft moral code to be taught in schools, the report, drawn up by a forum of teachers, parents and community leaders, has caused controversy before it's even been published. The Education Secretary saying it doesn't emphasise enough the role of the family.
Strong family support and the contribution that strong families make to society are of inestimable value, and we must look at ways that we strengthen that side of the report.
But the Education Chief who commissioned the report pointed out the problems of pushing traditional family values in schools.
It is very delicate and sensitive indeed, trying to develop an understanding of the importance of family life in communities where perhaps most of the children in a school come from non-traditional families.
Teaching unions accused Mrs Shepherd of hypocrisy.
Frankly, for this government, I think so ridden as it has been with Sleaze, for it to be lecturing others about the need for morality is something which pupils and teachers are going to find quite sickening.
And with the publication of this report on values in schools, as well as the government's new education bill with its emphasis on discipline, the national morality debate is set to continue this week. Hugh Pym, ITN, Westminster.
A teacher who's under investigation for allowing a boy who'd been bullied to punish those responsible may face disciplinary action. She let the 5-year-old smack the hands of his 6 bullies with a wooden ruler. Tim Hewitt reports.
Joe Middleton was the victim of a gang of 6 bullies at his local school. His parents were told he'd been kicked around the playground like a football. What happened at school?
Kicked me.
Someone punched you in the belly, didn't they?
Yeah.
Teacher Brenda Davis decided it was time to act on Joe's behalf. She offered him the chance to hit back. His tormentors at this Luton school were lined up, and Joe tapped each on the hand with a ruler once.
That tap was enough to sting. It was enough to get their attention, so that afterwards they took seriously what was said.
It was also enough to land Mrs Davis in hot water. Parents complained, governors are investigating, she could be sacked. Mrs Davis has the full backing of her union. They say her actions were completely reasonable.
I think what she's done is absolutely right. I just can't believe that people are complaining. You know, if it had been situations reversed and Joe had been there kicking somebody, he'd have come home and got a bloody good hiding, wouldn't you?
Mrs Davis continues to teach while her fate is decided. Joe Middleton says he's now happy to be at school. Tim Ewart, ITN, Luton.
Labour announced tonight that it's to launch a national petition to try to get a ban on combat knives. It's insisted that a workable definition of such knives is possible. The head of the prison service, Richard Tilt, suggested today that the problem of overcrowded jails could be eased by convicted criminals working during the week and spending only the weekends behind bars. And police in the Irish Republic have uncovered a suspected IRA arms cache in a remote part of County Donegal. They found 2 rifles and some explosives. 6 men are under arrest. Forces opposed to Afghanistan's new Islamic Taliban government today stepped up their bombardment of Taliban positions in the capital, Kabul. They also tried to capture a key strategic pass to the north. Our Asia correspondent Mark Austin is in Kabul.
Under the light of a full moon, jet fighters sweep over Kabul, provoking a stream of anti-aircraft fire from across the city. The planes came again at dawn, their intended target the city airport used by Taliban jets. But one bomb fell in a park near the centre of Kabul, causing damage but no casualties. Among the long-suffering people here, new fears that it may herald a further bombardment on the capital itself, though the military alliance opposing the Taliban has said it will not mount such an attack. This is a taste of what the people of Kabul fear most, a return to the plane and artillery barrages they've lived with for the last 2 decades. In the mountains north of Kabul, the forces of Ahmed Shah Massoud launched another attempt today to remove the Taliban from hills overlooking the city, but they're facing fierce resistance. More and more refugees are fleeing their homes as the fighting spreads, and with the onset of snow and freezing weather just weeks away, they face a winter of increasing hardship. Mark Austin, ITN, Kabul, Afghanistan.
Finally, football, and Liverpool go into 3rd place in the Premiership after beating Derby County 2-1 at Anfield. Both Liverpool goals came from Robbie Fowler. He scored his second, a header, just 4 minutes after his first. Earlier, Manchester City lost 1-0 at home to Wolves. Steve Bull's goal puts Wolves in 4th place in Division 1. And that's the news tonight. From the Weekend News team here at ITN, good night.
Hello, good evening. Well, we start with an early warning of severe weather conditions from the Met Office concerning tomorrow, and that's for much of Northern Ireland, England and Wales, with very strong winds indeed for southern parts, and then the heaviest rain reserved for northern areas. Our Met Office wind flow chart here highlights the culprit, low pressure firmly in charge of our weather, but that really is only half the story. Once we see the back of that particular low, an even more intense deepening depression takes over, basically spelling out those unsettled weather conditions. So I'm afraid we go into our brand new week on a thoroughly miserable and wet note. The heaviest rain of all reserved for Northern Ireland, north of England and North Wales, and more or less likely to remain there throughout the day, with the strongest winds to the south of that rain, in fact up to gale or severe gale force through the English Channel. Now all's not lost. Later on in the day, slowly, very slowly indeed, we see brighter weather getting into southern Scotland and Northern Ireland. So as you'd expect, temperatures aren't too wonderful at all. Even so, 15 or 16 in the brightest slots, add on the wind, feeling a lot cooler, and a distinctly chillier 6 or 7 up in the north of Scotland, mid-40s with northerly winds. Good night.
Sponsored by Powergen, producing electricity, whatever the weather.
Tomorrow on GMTV, the teacher who allowed a victim of bullying to smack his tormentors. She says it taught a powerful lesson to the bullies. Their parents want her sacked. And live from Halifax, where teachers are threatening strike action unless 60 unruly pupils are excluded. Schools in crisis. The news and views on GMTV tomorrow.
LWT weather, sponsored by First Choice Holidays, for a brighter outlook.
Good evening. Time for a final look at the weather in the LWT region. Tonight, rain becoming more persistent, but it's actually quite warm. 12 Celsius, 54 Fahrenheit is the low. As for Monday morning, well, it's going to be dull and wet to start off with. Brighter weather beginning to edge in from the west as we head towards lunchtime. So by the afternoon, we will see glimpses of sunshine mixed in with the showers, but some very strong winds, gale force winds, up to 35 miles an hour. So hold on to whatever's going to get blown around. Enough blow from me. Good night.
For a detailed forecast, call Weather Update, sponsored by First Choice Holidays on 0891 11 0000.
Next tonight, the South Bank Show reports from the set of Neil Jordan's new movie about the controversial Republican hero Michael Collins. Every year, British Airways looks after the hopes and dreams of 30 million people. British Airways, the world's favourite airline.
Someone you know?
Oh, in passing.
En passant. How very English.
It's history. What a beautiful hotel. 16th century.
But look who's checking in.
Yes, but that's history.
The new Renault Megane Coupe. It talks your language.
They call me Air McGrath. Well, Hair McGrath, actually. A 5-minute weekend chat to the USA and Canada used to cost this lot $1.45, but now it's down to just $1.31. And if you're on BT's Friends and Family and Premier Line, it can be as low as 98p. Check how much you could save. Call...
Tonight on Theatreland, sex and violence with Shaw and Shakespeare, real-life dramas with Anthony Sher, and the unbelievably legendary Lieber and Stoll.
That's all on Theatreland tonight after the South Bank Show.
For the best days of the week, this is LWT with the South Bank Show.
The South Bank Show, in association with the Sunday Telegraph. The art of a perfect Sunday.
Now Neil Jordan's lavish film on the controversial Irish hero Michael Collins. Michael Collins was a military mind behind Irish independence. He invented modern, urban guerrilla warfare and fought a campaign that forced the British government to negotiate a peace treaty which led to the foundation of the Irish Free State. He was also a ruthless guerrilla who made a compromise for peace and was eventually killed by his own side for doing so. Neil Jordan has been planning to make a film about Michael Collins for over 10 years. When he finally began filming last year, there was an IRA ceasefire and hopes that there might be some sort of peace in the north of Ireland. After filming was over, the ceasefire ended. The film was shown at the Venice Film Festival recently, where it won 2 awards and high praise from critics such as Alexander Walker, who's known to be no friend of the Republican movement. Tony Knox's film looks at how Neil Jordan has treated the story of the real Michael Collins and at some of the political implications for the present day of the Michael Collins story.
Go back there.